You know that feeling when you're scrolling through your social media feed and it just feels a little too perfect, like everyone in the room is nodding along with you? Well, today we're digging into that. Are we all stuck in these digital bubbles? And more importantly, is there a way to pop them? Let's get into it. Seriously, think about your own feed for a second. When you're scrolling, are you really hearing 1,000 different points of view? Or is it more like the same point of view, just echoed back at you 1,000 times? It's a really important question for all of us in today's world. And right, this is where it all starts. The whole point of these algorithms is to keep you glued to the screen, right? And the easiest way to do that is to feed you stuff you already like, stuff you already agree with. And boom, before you know it, you're in this super personalized bubble, your own little echo chamber. It makes it almost impossible to just stumble upon something that might, make you think differently. Okay, so we're in these bubbles, but why are these so tough to pop? Well, it turns out it's not just the tech. A huge part of it is us. It's our own brains. There's this thing in psychology called belief frigidity, and it's a real game changer here. Let's break it down. Belief frigidity is basically our brain's default setting for stubbornness. We're just naturally wired to hold on to what we believe, even if new facts pop up. It's a totally normal human thing. But when you throw in social media algorithms that are constantly feeding you stuff that confirms what you already think, well, that natural tendency just goes into overdrive. It's like putting it on steroids. Okay, and this is where it gets super interesting. See, our beliefs, they're not just logical ideas floating around in our heads. No, they are deeply, deeply emotional. They're part of our identity. This quote nails it. They have an emotive dimension. And that explains so much, right? It's why having a belief challenged can feel like someone's attacking you personally, not just your idea. And because our beliefs were so tied to our emotions, you don't really see people have these huge, dramatic aha moments where they just flip their entire worldview overnight. It just doesn't work that way. What the research shows is that changing our minds is a slow burn. It happens in these tiny little steps. So it's not a giant leap, it's more like a really, really slow walk. All right, so knowing all this about our stubborn, emotional brains, some researchers got an idea. They set up this super cool experiment to see if they could actually do something about it. Their question was pretty straightforward. Can we build a digital space that helps, gently nudge people out of their bubbles? Let's check out how they did it. First, they got 163 participants. And they didn't pick an easy topic. Nope. They went right for one of the most polarizing issues around: climate change. Talk about a perfect stress test for how rigid our beliefs can be. So they split everyone into two groups. The first group, they got what was basically your standard social media feed, full of opinions that were already pretty close to their own. But the second group, this is the interesting part, they got a completely randomized feed. They were exposed to a whole mix of views from all over the spectrum. Just one simple change to the algorithm, but it could have massive consequences. Okay, so here's the play-by-play of the experiment. It happened in 3 steps. First, you'd state your opinion and why you held it. Step 2, you'd get to see what other people were saying, and you had the chance to kind of tweak your own rating. And finally, step 3, you picked 3 people to follow into the next round. It was such a smart setup because the researchers could see not just if people's minds were changing, but also who they were choosing to listen to. All right, the stage is set. We've got our 2 groups. The experiment is underway. So what happened? Did this one little tweak to the feed actually make a difference? Did people act differently, think differently? So the first question they had to answer was a big one. Are we just naturally drawn to people who already agree with us? And yep, the data was crystal clear. Yes. It didn't matter which group you were in, people consistently followed others who saw the world the same way they did. There's actually a name for this. It's called homophily. It literally means love of the same. Birds of a feather, right? And check this out. This chart shows just how deep it goes. It's measuring something called cosine similarity, which is just a fancy way of saying how alike people's writing was. And what they found is amazing. In both groups, people followed others who not only thought like them, but who wrote like them. They used similar words, similar phrasing, so it's not even just what you believe, it's how you say it. Wild. Okay, so we've established we like our own crowd. No surprise there. But now for the million-dollar question. Did that randomized feed, the one with all the different opinions, did it actually make people more open-minded? And get this. The answer was a huge yes. This right here is the heart of the whole study. This chart shows something called belief network distance, basically how different the people you follow are from you. And I mean, just look at it.
The people in that randomized group went out and followed people with way more diverse opinions. The randomness worked.
Let's put some hard numbers to that. The average belief distance for the randomized group, 1.546, and for the echo chamber group, just 1.201. That's a real difference. Simply seeing more variety made people choose to expand their own world.
But wait, it gets even more fascinating. It wasn't just about who they followed. The simple act of seeing other opinions, even opinions they totally disagreed with, was enough to make people actually start to shift their own views.
No, look, nobody did a complete 180 on their beliefs. That's not what happened. But the folks in that randomized group, they were noticeably more likely to adjust their position, even if it was just a little bit. That 27%, it might not sound like a revolution, but it's huge. It shows that just getting that exposure to different ideas can start to break down that belief rigidity we were talking about. Okay, so what does all this mean for us? For you and me just scrolling away on our phones every day? Let's pull back and look at the big picture here. All right, so let's recap the key takeaways. First, we're naturally drawn to people like us. That's just how we're wired. Second, even with that, we're not immune to what other people think. We can be influenced. Third, and this is the really hopeful bit, just injecting a little bit of randomness into our feeds can actually make us more open. And all of that leads to the big one. How these platforms are designed has a direct, real, psychological effect on us. And that's the bottom line, isn't it? The code running our social media feeds isn't just neutral. It's not just a tool. It's actively building the world we see online. And it can be designed to build walls, trapping us in our bubbles. Or it can be designed to build bridges, gently nudging us to look over the fence and see what someone else is thinking. So I want to leave you with this one last thought. Right now, pretty much every social media platform is built to do one thing: maximize engagement, keep you scrolling. But what if that wasn't the goal? What if our feeds were designed not just to capture our attention, but to actually expand our minds? What would that world look like? Something to chew on. Thanks for tuning in.